Sale of the city property. Do you have a list of that?
Sale of the city property?
Yeah, that's what I'm supposed to be bringing up tonight.
I have no idea what it is.
That makes five of us.
They think they have more time because their clock back there is different from ours.
Oh,
He says, okay, we got 5 minutes. I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't believe so.
Forget about that when I come back there.
Hearing.
Hey Justin, how are you? Good. Oh, yeah, yep. Put it on for the 4th and adopt on the 11th. Yep. Okay. Yep, I can do that.
Awesome. Congratulations.
I now call the Norton Council Committee work session to order for Monday, November 20th, 2017. The time is 7:01. Please rise for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silent prayer.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Mrs. Richards, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Casey,
Here.
Mr. McGlone,
Here.
Mr. Kernan,
Here.
Mr. Pearson,
Mr. Pearson's excused.
Mr. Towsley,
Here.
Mr. Pelot,
Mr. Pelot's excused.
and Miss Whipke.
Here. Committee work session, general topics. Are there any reports from the committee chairs? Okay. Moving on, first thing up, item A, the 2018 budget review. That falls to me under finance. And I think we'll go ahead and turn this over to Mr. Messner.
Thank you, Madam President. It's that wonderful time of the year again. Everybody looks so much forward to it. Before I start, just a couple of items to go over in the way of explanation, and our new councilmen also have copies, so they will be following along so that they can hit the ground running in January. We basically start off with the table of contents, and there are two table of contents. One is for the general fund, and I've listed all of the items, departments that basically fall into the general fund with the total general fund balance. And then the next page is the table of contents for all the enterprise funds. And then at the bottom of the enterprise funds, you'll see total enterprise funds, total general fund and enterprise funds, and then the total general and enterprise revenue, and then total revenue over expense. The next section is basically the general revenue section that starts, the heading is in yellow, 3 pages. All of the revenue for the general fund basically is seen on those 3 pages. The next one, starting in kind of a mauve, rose-colored, is enterprise revenue summary. There are several pages with that. And the total of everything as far as total revenue is $15,028,070. So that's basically where the revenue comes. One thing that I would point out, just remind council again, you can somewhat follow the revenue, especially the enterprise revenue. If you look at the expense side, you can see that like Fund 102, which is our service department, on the revenue side, it also starts with Fund 102. So you can kind of see revenue, expense and revenue You can follow that back and forth if you want to see the particular items that make up revenue for that area. My game plan this year is somewhat like last year. I would tell council I'm available for any of your questions. Several of you have already asked questions, and I've answered a few of those. I think Mrs. Richards has the right idea. If you're going to ask the question, it probably is best that you email me and copy all of council, including Mrs. Richards, so that when I answer the question, I can answer everybody. We don't have to go over it again and again and again. So if everybody would remember that, that would be helpful. The big three, I like to call them Service Department, the Police Department, and the Fire Department. Those are basically our very big accounts. In addition to that, the next biggest agenda items are the Road Department, capital expense, some expense in Fund 128. We do have somewhat of a capital project that's coming up for Phase 2, and we'll talk about that. Tonight, I'm hoping to get through Service Department. We have Mr. Hess here and Chief D'Alessandro from the Police Department. So if there's no further questions to start with, I think if you will turn to page 43, we'll get started with the Service Department. And Mr. Hess, if you would like to come up and sit next to Mr. Markey.
Yeah, this is it.
I've asked the department managers here so that you can ask any questions and concerns that you have. I know that in speaking to Mr. Hess, I believe he has got handouts for council. I would just point out that in my first years here at the city, I tried very, very hard, as many of you will remember, to work with Mr. Reynolds to try to develop capital expense so that we could timely replace equipment that was very quickly falling apart. That we made a little bit of progress, but not near like we should have. So I think tonight Mr. Hess has a game plan. He has pictures that he would like, I believe, to share with council.
If I may.
And if you want to get those out to them now, we'll get started.
Was there an amended one for service too? Just for police. Yeah, this was in my mailbox, so I don't know why you didn't get one.
While he's passing those out, I would just would mention that it's been a great pleasure to work with Larry. He brings a real sense of professionalism to the department. We've been able to do a lot of good things in the service department. He has a lot of good ideas. We have, under his managerialship, we've hired an excellent mechanic in Brandon Light. Brandon is doing a fabulous job in working on our equipment, trying to maintain the equipment, keeping it up to speed as best he can. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about some of that and go over some numbers.
When I get done, I'll give mine to Scott.
Real quick, Ron, full-time employees, do we have the same amount as last year to this year?
We've hired one additional.
That's why, okay, that's where the difference is, okay.
Part of it, yes.
And how many full-times do we have there now?
I want to say 11,
11?
I believe, is that not correct, Larry? 11 full-time?
Larry, 11 full-time?
Brandon
Yes. Pam would be 12.
and Pam, yeah, Pam is the office manager. but-
Okay.
But laborers and mechanic and that.
Okay.
So, also to just reiterate with council, the way that I've worked on the budget is I have basically, back in August, early August, basically gave to the department managers a copy of this worksheet. I've asked them to give me their hopes and desires, their wishes, so to speak. They've marked down. I've pretty much accepted with a few tweaks here and there that I've discussed with them. Everything above the yellow line is basically salary and benefits. That I work with Pam Dixon, our payroll clerk, for those numbers, and so they basically come from me. So, Larry, I'm going to let you start and give, I know you have some things that you'd like to discuss with council.
Sure.
Before he starts, Ron, could you go make me a set of the new advised police ones? I don't seem to have those. The revised one?
Yeah.
There was one in my mailbox.
Well, I just don't have everything, and I'm
In
not
fact, I
finding
have,
it.
let me pass that to Charlotte.
I
Okay.
just used the ones that I had online to work
I
with.
had a couple
earlier.
extra
Thank
just in case somebody.
Thank
I
you
think
very much.
I got one.
Sorry.
Mine was in the mailbox.
Okay.
Is this what, this one?
I think, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah, I
is
got
it,
Yes.
because I changed it on my.
If everybody wants to check, just to be sure, on page 15 is the front page. Your top number should be 2,811,066. If you have that, you have the most up to date.
Got it.
Everybody have that,
Say
okay?
that number again?
86.
86, not
2,811,066.
86.
86.
I got 86.
Two
Okay,
eight
I'm
11
sorry.
086.
I was saying.
But I'm looking over the top of my.
Okay.
My mistake, thank you. I don't
Okay,
want to.
sorry.
I don't want to cheat Chief D'Alessandro out of $20. Every bit helps.
I just wanted to, you can talk about things and seeing them are two different things. And one of the things that was stressed to me when I was hired is that we needed to get a kind of a rotation of vehicle replacement going. But that's not really possible until we get up to a certain point where we have vehicles that are good enough to replace. To be honest, the equipment, as far as the trucks go that are our salt equipment, they're in very bad shape. The pictures, I don't think I really need to explain a lot about. They're in very sad shape. So our focus, budget-wise, as best we can, we want to maximize where we can and we get some equipment so we can get our standards up, get our guys some good stuff that they can go out and take care of the resident streets for them a lot better. Just for kind of just a matter of knowledge, when it comes to a truck, and if you notice, we have a breakdown with hours and miles, and obviously the year, that's some of those are some of our trucks are pretty old, but when it comes down to hours, between 6,000 and 8 hours of engine use, that is generally recommended that you replace a motor. So you can see 3 out of those are well into that area, and some past. So we could lose a transmission or engine at any time in 3 out of the 4 of these vehicles. So that's concerning to us. As Ron had mentioned earlier, we have a top-notch mechanic, has been doing a great job, but it's going to be all he can do to keep up with this. So we're hoping that with some of the income that we have directed towards equipment replacement, that we can get into a much better place. That is our biggest need right now, is update our fleet.
And you will notice down at the bottom, in the red box, the lease payments. Those are the leases that we have that are in existence. You'll see that 2 of them pay out in 19. The backhoe pays out in 2020. At this point, I have budgeted for 2 of the 5-ton replacements. And in speaking with Larry, one of the initial goals that we had was to try to get Brandon, our mechanic, some additional help, and we kind of thought that perhaps what we would do is try to see if we could get a mechanic laborer that part-time as needed when Brandon gets really swamped, he could move into the shop, help Brandon with maintenance, and then as things settle down out there, perhaps we would take him out to be whatever, laborer, operator B, operator A, depending on what kind of qualifications he came in at. As Larry and I talked about that, and he was developing his information, I asked him last week, I said, Larry, if we really need, and it appears that we need, to replace some of our heavy-duty trucks for this season even, if you had the choice of hiring a part-time mechanic, laborer, or replacing a truck, what would your desire be? And he didn't blink too many times and said, at this point, I'd like to have both, but if it's one or the other, I really need the truck. So I would propose, and we'll certainly let council speak to this, I would propose that perhaps we move additional funds out of the salary and benefits for the mechanic, which would potentially give us about another $44,000, potentially move that out of salary and benefits and move that down into the lease payment area, increasing the 82.5, perhaps up into the realm of $120-some thousand in that, allowing Larry to potentially purchase as soon as possible the first of the year 3 new trucks or newer trucks. Once in a while, last year being especially, we early on we had an opportunity to purchase a 5-ton newer truck with snow blade, all the equipment, for about $46,000. That's unheard of. Larry Hitchings, the mechanic at the time, looked at it. It was in beautiful condition. We wanted it bad, but it's hard to move a situation like that through. By the time you get to Board of Control, you get to council, you have your readings, you get back. We basically lost it to a township that went out and said, we like it, we want it, we'll take it. We couldn't move it through council fast enough in that. So those opportunities do arise, and Larry and Brandon are looking for those. And if we can buy something that will give us a number of years of good service, we certainly will do that. A new 5-ton, normally we can't pay cash for them because usually they're well over $100,000 in that. So basically, we choose to lease those, and this will be no exception. We'll probably go a 4 or 5 year lease on these particular vehicles. We'll try to do the best we can on financing, and when we're ready to do that, we'll certainly bring that back to Board of Control and Council for a final approval. But at this point, if Council has no objection, I'm going to move those funds out of salary and benefits down into the lease area so that he can purchase another truck.
Could you explain that a little further? The salary and benefits, is that a proposed new employee that you're taking that from?
That's correct.
You're not
Mr.
getting rid of a current employee to do that?
That's correct.
Okay.
We would, actually what we would do, Mr. Towsley, is we would hire a new, I don't want to say part-time mechanic, But he would spend part of his time in the shop, and then as he's not needed there, when things are caught up, then he would go out and work in the field, labor, operator A, operator B, whatever, in that. So, yes, we basically would have hired another individual, but rather than doing that, we'll take those funds and move it down in to purchase potentially another truck lease.
So you're,
Council's okay
so
with
you're
that?
taking it out of the labor full-time line.
That would be correct. And it will also come out of the health benefit line.
Benefits.
Because we won't need benefits. So each one of those various lines, I would have to go into my salary sheet. Each one of those lines would be back down incrementally to produce about another $40,000 to $45,000 with salary and benefits.
Well, I mean, I for one, if Mr. Hess is saying he'd rather have the truck than the employee, then I trust his judgment in that, and looking at the pictures quickly that we got passed around, I can see why he'd rather have some trucks.
We need them. There are some other needs as well. We kind of have the same problem with some of our grass cutting equipment, so it's not just, right now in this time of the year, it's our biggest need. Our 1-ton dump trucks are pretty bad shape too. I could show you some pictures and things on that as well, but I mean, that's our immediate need. It's I don't want to say critical, but it's
Getting
pretty
to be
serious.
critical, yeah.
Pretty serious.
And I think that you'll recall we just purchased 2 new Ford F-250s. I believe we plan to equip those with snow blades.
Yes.
And to do whatever we can to help with the load.
I was going to bring one with me, but it's, being dark, you wouldn't get the full effect of, really nice. I appreciate council's willingness to get us those 2 new vehicles, and they'll be put into service as soon as they're ready.
So hopefully that'll take some of the pressure off in that, but it doesn't. You can see his goal is to actually get up to 8. We have 5 right now. I would say that 2 are in decent condition. 3 are pretty rough.
I don't know if I'd use those words. We have 1 in good shape, 1 in fair, and the rest are whatever you want to describe it. I don't have a word for it.
My biggest concern is that first we need to have equipment to keep our residential streets plowed. We also need to keep our drivers safe in that, and that's my fear, that these trucks are getting to the point where they're bordering on really not being safe.
And I don't want to spend half of the winter with the trucks in the repair shop trying to get something done to them before we can get them back out on the road. And we waste more time trying to piecemeal it together so that we can put it back in service, another temporary fix.
We all now know how winters can be in Ohio. So.
Yes, sir.
How far after they're purchased they could be on the road?
Joe, if we've contacted a few of the suppliers, if they have the truck in stock, it won't be too bad. It won't be a large turnaround. I'm hoping a month, it just depends on if they have. We have the particular model that we like, and I know Henderson has 2 of those trucks, and we're going to keep looking to see. We really need them to be in stock. So as long as people don't, other communities don't go out and grab them, then we should be able to turn them around quickly. That's my hope. Not a guarantee, but a hope.
And you're staying with the same models?
Well, we're going to try to stay in the same. We're going to try to stay in the same. Try to standardize as much as possible. So, we're at, that's our goal, and to get in a nice rotation so that we're going to have good equipment that's dependable and not always limping along kind of how we're doing now. So.
Right.
So what Larry mentioned briefly was when we get to the summertime, we're in pretty desperate need of a highway tractor, mowing tractor for out on 21. 585. The tractor we have now has got excessive miles on it. It's breaking down. We need to replace. I was down this last summer, and Brandon had, it seemed like 5 or 6 of the zero turns in the shop. First, I didn't know we had that many, but boy, to look at them, they looked like they were out of the Civil War. In that they were really in tough shape, and he was trying to cannibalize parts to put on the newer ones. So we're taking a very hard look at our capital program for the service department. Folks, we can't do it overnight. I'm sorry, we just don't have the funds to do it overnight. We're going to move it just as quickly as we can to replace. And one thing I appreciate is that Larry and Brandon are out searching. Brandon has been phenomenal. He has brought suppliers, places that he's dealt with that have saved us already a lot of money in parts, and he's done fabulous work. So we're really getting a good bang for our buck there, and I believe that as we look forward to purchasing new equipment, we will purchase the right kind of equipment. We can't purchase residential mowers to mow our parks and our properties with. We've got to have commercial mowers in that. Those are somewhat more expensive, but they hold up better in that. So we're going to try to do it right so we don't have to come back as often. But Larry has provided me with a capital plan in that over the next 10 to 15 years of things that they feel like that they need to replace when. And we'll take a very hard look at that as we go down the road. Most of the other things that are in the budget have been there. You can see I've provided you with the history. Is there other questions that the council may have on any other particular line item?
Ron, if I might,
Sure.
If we could take a look at the tree services line item,
Sure.
and in order to qualify for Tree City, that needs to be at 25.
Okay.
I know we've spoken about this before, but could you just tell us the benefits of being part of Tree City? Remind us, anybody.
Well, I'm just going to tell you, I'm not exactly sure, and that's because I haven't. That was one of the things that Valerie was going to get me up to speed on, and she left before that ever happened. So, I don't know the particulars of it, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. I do not know the particulars.
Good.
I would suggest you talk to Neva Gibson on parks.
I know it's been explained to us in the past, but I got to be honest, I don't remember.
She's major, and she actually got us, I think, involved in the Tree City to begin with. Am I correct, Mayor?
I think, she's
been real
it
active.
was Neva and,
I think Ada
Parks
and
Department.
Neva's working on it now, but Neva would be able to help you the most.
Larry, the cleaning contract really jumped up since 2014. Now I see it's even doubled for this year. What's that?
That's our building. They do at our place. They do quarterly floors and windows and some light cleaning.
And Dennis, what we actually need to do is talking to Rowmaster. The shop gets used very heavily. The guys come in with muddy boots.
Okay.
I went out to, since they have the contract for the next 2 years yet, I went out to ask them for an additional quote, $260 a month for them to come in on once a week. It'd probably be nice. We do here at least twice a week. All the other buildings twice a week. But at least to get it done once a week where, they would mop the floors, clean the restrooms, locker rooms, stuff like that.
Okay.
$260 a month.
the thing is, down there, Rowmaster wasn't cleaning down there.
No, they weren't.
See, that's
Okay.
the difference.
Okay.
The guys were just trying to keep
Gotcha.
things cleaned on their own behalf.
Okay.
And we're trying to bring Rowmaster in to to get them in there and help kind of keep that service.
That makes more sense then.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at doing actually is getting a larger contract with them that's going to include this 14,000 or whatever it is, just for the service garage itself,
Right,
above what we're paying for all the other buildings.
right.
Okay. So that'll have to come before us anyway, won't it? Is it?
Well, the contract has already been given. You've already approved the contract with Roadmaster. It's just the additional $265 times 12 in that, so that's the additional piece that we would hook on to what's there already. Most of the cleaning contract is paid out of the service department for here, the community center, and the service department.
So we won't have to do anything with the contract we have currently. Council won't.
No, it was a 5-year contract, and we still have like 2 years yet to go, 2.5 years. We're only halfway through it.
Ron, I know it's a small item, but do we pursue insurance for guardrail repairs? Does the city pursue people if they crash into the guardrail? Do we go after that?
Well, police chief's here. I think he can answer that. But I was going to say, I believe anything we can get from insurance funds, we do.
Okay.
As from reports and so forth.
Right.
But I'd say we can concur. But he's shaking his head.
I
yes.
saw him
So,
nodding
yeah,
back there, so.
I mean, it was my understanding that if we can collect from a report that was put on
Right.
file with us, then and it's damage done to a guardrail, then we go out and pursue that.
Okay, good.
I'm looking at the utilities, and it's actually been decreased by 1,500. Now, I'm just wondering how much of a reflection is that due to the improvements we made, switching over to gas and going with the energy company?
That'll be the big part of it. That'll be a big part of it. And you'll see in the unencumbered through July, which is a little bit more than halfway, we were still almost $7,000 left open to use. So I cut back a little bit, not tremendously amount, but I believe that there are some savings there. I'm even hoping that it'll come in less than 25, especially with LEDs that we've put and the gas that we've put down there. Hopefully that should save us a goodly amount.
And that was all involved in that contract that we made with the energy company.
Gardner.
We haven't gone through a full year on that, though, have we?
No, in
So, I mean,
fact, Gardner basically, just to bring council up to speed on that, Gardner was in a week or two ago to sign the final document, the completion document. So actually, about the middle of October is when the savings period, they just ran into different little things along the way, and they kept tweaking this and fixing that, and they'd come out and do some additional work, so they were never able to actually sign off to start the savings period. So actually, the savings period will actually start back in mid-October. So we'll actually run from October to October. Remember, they guaranteed us that they would give us $10,000 a year savings in utilities. That'll go from October to October. So they're now starting to watch our utilities. They'll be talking to us as they see things kind of slide off or slide, if we're going okay. They're watching us electronically. They can monitor this building. In fact, the police department today was kind of cool in that. I kind of wondered how long it would be before they wanted to switch from summer cooling to winter heating. In that, all summer long they've been wanting to be 60, 65 because of their vests and that. And today I was working in my office and Paula ran up and grabbed me by the, and I said, man, oh man, is your hands cold. She says, it's freezing downstairs. So we were able to get to Gardner. They went online and basically they can set the temperatures throughout the building, all the buildings, electronically from Clear Up and Solon. And they can monitor that from afar. So.
Okay, now, the other question also is due with the decrease on the fuel. Why are we going, we've already went through the 35, I'm taking it, for this year. The way I'm understanding that, unencumbered, it says 0 for 2017, and we're decreasing it down to 30.
Well, there again, looking at the history and what I do, Charlotte, is the reason you don't see anything in the unencumbered, I encumber the whole amount. So next year, I will encumber a purchase order for Norton City Schools where we purchase our fuel. I'll encumber $30,000. So that won't show, if I only encumber 20 and we didn't spend all the 20, then you would see something in the unencumbered line.
Okay.
I can tell you at this point, we have not spent close to that amount, and we'll see the same thing when we get to the police department. We've had some pretty good savings in our fuel area.
Right, I had the same question down for them.
Right.
Just a point of information, we have a fuel tank. It's a self-contained, it's the high sulfur fuel for our backhoes and off-road equipment. So, we're going to be able to get a much better price and not be dependent on the school for that. So just a little thing that should help offset some of the expenses.
How are salt prices this year? So, I mean,
We were able to buy salt, I want to say at about $52
It was
a
50,
ton.
54.40 something a ton. And actually, that was last year's prices. We have, when you contract with SUE, you are required to take at least 80% of your entire total. Like, say if it's a 100-ton order, you have to take 80 for sure. Yeah. And so if you've ordered 1,000 and you only took 60, you're required to, by the end of the year, to take the rest of it. So we took our leftover at the old price. So that was about, I think, 2,200 tons or something like that at that price. And then actually this year's price was down a little bit. So the rest of our salt this year will be at a cheaper.
So our barns are full, and hopefully we'll have a decent winter.
Yeah.
Now we just need trucks to spread it.
We just need trucks to spread it, and if we need more, after, I believe, October, November, the prices go up fairly substantially. They kind of get you, so Larry's been way ahead of the curve on that, so our barns are full, we're ready to go.
Durac patch supplies, I notice we're budgeting far less this year. Is there a reason for that?
You'll also see Durapatch in the road budget, Mr. Towsley, when we get over to road, which is, it's on page 69. There is $25,000 there as well. So, and Larry works out of both of those, between the two of those. So basically, he's got, and that's also based on some of what we did this year, the usage we had this year as well.
So it's 31.5.
So,
But in this particular case, it looks like we spent 15 and we're budgeting 6.5. I just want to make sure we're going to be all right.
I think we will be, really do.
I mean, we're not cutting back or anything as far as,
No, we'll still be able to maintain the roads.
okay.
I had one question on the repair and maintenance equipment. I noticed we budgeted for $164K. We've only spent $28K in 7 months. Is that possible?
no, that means we have 28 left.
We have 28 left.
Left unencumbered.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
we've spent the difference
So
between the
that's the
28
okay.
and the 164.
Okay, gotcha.
And since July, Dennis, they've used
Okay.
a goodly amount of
I
that
see.
too.
It's the opposite of what I understand now.
Right. Other questions?
I got one more for you, if you don't mind, Mr. Messner. Could you just break down the budget leases, the proposed leases?
Yes, the Cabell.
What's confusing me a little bit, if I can just explain, is you mentioned that a truck costs, did you say 120 or something like that?
It all depends. I think the ones that Larry's looking at are probably a little bit less than that.
Yeah, and like Paul, there's things that you can do that you have to make a decision. For instance, like all of your hardware, your bolts, stainless steel versus metal. You have to make a decision because you're going to pay for that. So if we get a nice rotation, that is something you wouldn't really need to do. And we've just, as a department, we need to and we will do a better job of keeping these trucks in better shape.
That was another question I was going to ask later, is if there's going to be a program
Absolutely.
Yes.
put together for that.
I mean, one of the things we're going to do, it's something I learned is vinegar neutralizes salt. So we'll spray those trucks down. It'll get in all the nooks and crannies, and it'll neutralize the effects of it. I learned that when I was in another community, and it works really well. So we're gonna implement that. So we're just gonna stay on it. We're gonna keep those trucks clean, and you know.
But back to the numbers, you've got like budgeted around $41,000 per year, correct? Per vehicle?
That's correct, for lease payment.
And if the truck's 121, my math isn't working right on 5 years.
Well, this isn't the, are you looking actually at the 145? Is that?
No, in red at the bottom, you have the budget for 2 5-ton replacement leases at 82.5, and that's where I came up with my 41,000.
Right, which actually I'm going to add probably another 44 to
Right.
that.
But my question is, if I break that in half, the 41,000,
Right.
that's basically in 3 years, 41 times 3, you're getting to your 120 area. But you said you're going to lease them over 5 years. I know
Well-
there's interest, but it's not going to be 80,000.
And yeah, I see where you're coming from. And in all honesty, if we can get the right price truck and I can do it for 3, I'll do it for 3. If I can do it for 2, I'll do it for 2. I want to be sure
Sure.
that if I need like 4, that, you know,
Do it for 3.
yeah. I mean, I'd like to do it, you know me, I don't like.
So if you overshoot, it's just going to be in the budget,
It's in the budget.
service department
It'll
budget?
just go to the bottom line.
Okay, thank you.
And like this year, we had need of tools and different things that we needed to replace. I'm hoping that I do overshoot it, so I have something left that I can potentially, because as council is aware, you've granted me the authority to make budget adjustments throughout the year. I can move monies within the department as long as I don't evade the bottom line. And I do that back and forth as we have needs in that, but good question.
You said that we had tools that we need to replace. Were they just old or were they missing?
Both.
Have we developed a program where those tools won't become missing again?
Yeah. One
I
of the
mean, like a
things-
sign-out program or,
There wasn't, I can't speak for prior, and to be honest, it's, I don't have any proof. It's just hearsay, but, you know,
Right.
you kind of realize that things should be there and they're not, and that's all that's all I can say. There were some things there that there were supposed to be there that aren't there, that we had to have, so we ended up buying. So, yeah, place gets locked up. I mean, somebody smashes in there and can grab stuff. That's one thing, but things won't be walking out of there.
And just so everybody is aware, we do not permit our men to take their tools home. The city tools. The city tools, we don't, it's not like I need to borrow something.
Personal use stuff
For
for the
personal use to
weekend,
take
yeah.
home, that's not permitted in that.
So I got a little further concern though on the, I'm sorry to keep coming back to it. Is there any way on that, again, back to that budget replacement, is there any way that we can earmark, if there is money left, that it is set aside for another truck? So it doesn't just get lost in the budget?
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, if all of a sudden we can, let's say we get into a truck for $85,000 to $90,000, and I only have to spend for 2 years, and I have excess monies left, and I can get a 4th truck, by all means, we will definitely do that.
What I'm asking, is there a way we can put that in legislation?
Yeah, he's
or-
asking, because you just explained that you could move within the department budget, the funds. He's saying if there's left over, don't move the funds. Those funds should stay locked in place.
Would it
and
be
not
helpful
spent
if
on
I
other
put a
uses.
footnote down there that if there's excess funds, that we'll leave it in the lease line for additional purchase? Would that be helpful?
I think that would help me.
yeah, that would do it.
Wouldn't this be along the lines like we do in the police? We have the bill, that money never comes out of their rotating, for them to rotate
Well,
trucks.
theirs is a little bit different. They have a fund that
Yeah.
they're bringing money into, whereas with service, they don't have that type of fund.
Right, but we don't take anything out of it for anything but the vehicles.
That's correct.
So it'd be
But
basically.
what Mr. Towsley's saying, And it's true, if we got down to the end of the year, we met all of our lease payments, and we had excessive funds left there, potentially enough to buy another truck or lease another truck, and we needed to, let's say, purchase 2 commercial mowers, we could potentially transfer money up to the equipment line and purchase mowers. I think what Mr. Townsley's saying is he would like to footnote that if we
Leave
have
it in
additional
trucks.
monies, we leave it there for that purpose.
Right.
And I'm okay making a footnote to that effect.
And I wouldn't be opposed if you had to move it to mowers, but it'd be nice if we
Right.
knew that was what was happening.
Which,
That would,
in-
yeah, that wouldn't be to
those-
say that it couldn't be moved, it would just be a
Yeah,
discussion.
I think that's a definite courtesy, for sure.
Yeah, and for sure, that would have to happen because those are over $10,000. They'd have to go back to Border Control anyways, which I think would then raise the question.
Where'd the money come from?
So, do you want me to footnote in
Yes.
If the rest of the council's good with that,
Yes.
I would appreciate that.
That would kind of keep us out of this position where we've got 5, 6 trucks needed all at once.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, some of the things, what we got to look at those, if we replace 2 or 3 of them at the same time. We redo 2 of them maybe at the beginning of the year, maybe 1 at the end of the year kind of thing, to the point where, depending on whether they're brand new or if they've got a little bit of mileage on them or something. So, I mean, there's some play there as well. But if we're buying them all or leasing them all at the beginning of the year, in 10 years from now, we're going to be right in the same spot again, that we've got 3 trucks all the same, all the same, all high mileage and all high hours. So, I mean, we've got to kind of ease into a couple to the point where,
Try to create the rotation.
right.
We need a good baseline. We're not, it'll take us a little while to get there.
Right, correct.
So what I'll do is, I've done in past years, you'll see that Service Department's marked 43. I will make these changes, and I will mark that 43A, so that you know that a change was made on that particular budget line, or department budget. Okay, if there's no further questions, thank you, Mr. Hess.
Thank you.
And if Chief D'Alessandro will kindly come to the bar. I believe that's page 15. And 16 and 17. Part of the police department, part of it's in general fund and part of it's in the enterprise fund. You'll see that in the table of contents. Page 16 is in the general fund. The main police department budget is in the general fund. The DARE officer, drug law enforcement, DWI, grants and pension funds, those are all in the enterprise fund. Just a couple of things to note, and then we'll open up for questions. As council will recall, we do operate for our police cars. Council has set aside Fund 140. That's where we have additional funds that come in through the use of our vehicles, and presently that fund is built up to about $66,000. So there's going to be additional work, Chief tells me, here in this week to next week, and as 224 gets more use, trying to get open for winter, so that fund's going to grow even more. With that in mind, fourth line from the bottom, police cars. You'll see that actually went from 52,000 down to 15,000. That was done deliberately, knowing that we've got those funds over in Fund 140 to use for that purpose. Basically, I tried to save some additional dollars there. So it's not that we're cutting out police vehicles. In fact, I believe the chief, and he can speak to this, I believe his need is he'll want to replace 2 vehicles this year, possibly 3. In that we have a detective's car that's quite old, that is fast becoming in need of replacement, so we potentially might have 3 that need to be replaced. Other than that, I'll open it up to council for questions.
when, includes a lieutenant for the police officers, and looking at the difference in the pay, this is an additional officer, we're not getting rid of anybody or promoting, or we were going to put one back onto the patrolman.
Chief, I'll let you speak to that.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion with that lieutenant's position over the last 3 years since I've been chief, with the past city administrator and the current one and the mayor. I think after some discussion, we want to, we do want to promote somebody to that second in command position. It would probably be somebody not in the bargaining unit. So it does include, it does say it includes a lieutenant. We will end up promoting somebody in 2018 to a higher rank, but it's not an additional. You are correct.
Okay, we're going to promote somebody from our forces
Correct.
we have now.
Yes.
Are we going to replace them, though, back as a patrolman? Since the difference in the wages, I was just thinking maybe we were going to get another one then as well. Or is that just going to be the difference in the pay for them, plus raises?
Well, the finance director, he calculates the wages, and I think you've done that just because of, you know, we're going to be going into contract negotiations here. But I don't believe that there's money there for additional officers. I think right now it's just to maintain the current standard that we have.
With a slight increase, and I've done this over the last number of years. I've said lieutenant, but I think, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we want to try to actually promote a captain.
Correct.
And that-
From one of the sergeants. Currently have 4 sergeants, so one of them would be promoted to the captain position, and we would maintain 3 sergeants.
So I've added some additional funds, which I've done over the last number of years. We've had excess funds left there because we've never actually got around to
Utilized,
replacing.
yes, correct.
This year, I think, or the first of next year, we really want to make a concerted effort to do that, to have backup for the chief in that. So there are additional funds built into that salary line.
Jail service,
Yes.
is that out of your hands? Is that just something you're charged, basically?
Yes.
So the increase there is out of your hands?
Right. I mean, I don't know if you remember back in 2015 when, Summit County tried to, I think it was a county issue that failed, which
to the
kind of
ballot,
forced which kind of forced the sheriff's hand to shut down a wing of the jail, and he no longer takes misdemeanors. So what happens is we end up having to pay Barberton for that service. So that's something that we encumber.
So is that a flat fee from them, or is that just what you're expecting, the
Well,
amount of
that's
prisoners
right.
you
That-
push?
We pay a per day fee or per night fee per prisoners, and that can fluctuate whether, how many arrests we make.
Okay.
Those are non-felons, though, correct, Chief?
Well, we have had to house felons as well
I know.
in
but,
Barberton Jail.
I know, but it's supposed to be, I mean, we won't get into that this evening, but it's supposed to be non-felonious assault,
Correct.
felonious charges.
I don't know, looking this over, it looks like 2017 budget and 2018 budget are really close
It is.
to what it was last year. I don't see a whole lot of difference.
The big savings came out of that vehicle line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I noticed health insurance is down 40,000, no, 20,000, 25,000. How did we manage that?
Some of our people, the newer people that we came in are single rather than family.
Okay.
So we were able to save.
But on a percentage, the maintenance for the vehicles, how much is that is outsourced versus what we do in-house?
Well, we try to do the majority of it in-house, but, like Mr. Hess was saying before he left, Brandon is spending an awful lot of time trying to maintain their trucks and getting them ready for this winter. the last 2 months, I've had to pay another local mechanic to change the oil and do the regular maintenance. So we do some. I don't know what the figure is or percentage is.
So is that 30,000, Mr. Messner, is that divided between in-house and outsourced? Okay.
Yeah, all comes out of the same line.
So that makes,
I would say for the most part, up until the last month, month and a half, it's pretty much been done in-house.
Yes.
It's I think when Mr. Hess found out that Brandon was getting behind in servicing the trucks, repairing the trucks, trying to get it ready, he started falling behind and not knowing how soon we're going to have weather. He came to the chief and said, can you move to other sources, which the chief does have, so.
when it's done in-house, is it just done, or does the police department pay the service garage for their service, so to speak? Or is it just, you just do it and it's
purchase, we purchased all the items, the oil filters, stuff like that, but, Brandon does that work for us.
done? So that expense pretty much comes under the service garage's,
His hourly wage?
right, okay, thank you.
Did you want to talk about the capital improvement? See if we can move some funds this year?
That will probably have to have legislation, and I think we can handle it within that. I think
Okay.
it's up to you. I mean, if you want to broach the subject, I'm okay if.
Floor's yours.
What I would like to do, we've got a pretty good, we've maintained a pretty good rotation of buying new cruisers and keeping a newer fleet, less maintenance. I would really like to see us install a carport in the back of our parking lot. We've got a couple of estimates, verbal estimates. I've got nothing in writing, anywhere between 14,000 and I think 20,000. I do have some money left over from my 2017 budget in payroll and benefits. We did have a retirement that we didn't have to pay out, the severance package, what we thought we were going to. So at some point, my question was, can we transfer some of that money over, that way we can get a carport built?
But as far as transferring that money, we can't transfer it from salary and benefits
Correct.
to,
Additional expense.
right, without coming to city council for approval on that. So even though they get moved around in that same budget, you can't move from the top to the bottom and in other words, and do something with it. So what he's asking is that since he's been diligent in trying to save overtime hours and so forth, and he does have some expenses saved from 2017, he'd like to move some of that money and put it into the fund for next year to kind of keep the costs down in 2018 and still be able to work on putting a carport in to try and keep some of the winter weather off of the vehicles as well as the summer heat that beats down and helps drain batteries, whether it's
And the
cold or
equipment.
hot. So.
I would assume that the idea is to spend the money on the carport, and long-term, you're going to save money on other things.
Yes.
So how many cars would it would fit in?
I'm currently asking for a 10-vehicle carport.
Okay. And it would just be back down by
Yes.
where the cars are basically now? Okay.
On the far end, there's already electricity run out there. We do
Okay.
have a lamp out there. I'd like to kind of run electricity, have it lighted, so the officers can see. And
When you say carport, like closed on three sides and open in the
Yes.
front type thing?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Is this to be built this year or next year?
I don't know if we can build it this year, but I would like to get the ball rolling this year. Move or transfer some of the funds. Maybe some of the-
My only concern is not building it, is we're making the budget look like something, but we're actually making it something else. I would prefer it just be in the budget. Because if we're gonna spend it, it's really in the budget. You know what I'm saying? to me, it doesn't seem out in the open if we're passing a budget here and then you're going to spend another $15,000 to $20,000 that's not really in here. I would rather be out in the open. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
So if it could be built this year, it would come back to council and you would amend the budget potentially. But you're saying if it's going to happen next year, you'd prefer just if it's 15,000 or whatever the amount is, add it to the line item on the police budget.
Right, because we've always been told in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, in any department, when the end of the year comes, if there's leftovers, it just falls into the general fund.
It just rolls to the bottom line.
Correct.
Right.
Enterprise or general fund, it falls to the bottom line.
So if that money's left over this year, then either we should spend it this year or account for it in the budget next year is all I'm saying.
And I think, Paul, that's what Chief is saying. For example, if you look at the overtime police full-time, for 2017, we'd budgeted 65,000. You can see that through the end of July, we had only spent 47, so we've had a tremendous savings there in overtime. I think what the chief is saying is he would like to come to council before the end of this year and say to council, I'd like to build this. He would have quotes in hand. He basically then would ask council for legislation. We'd go to Board of Control, get approval there, bring it to council. If council would so approve, basically what we would do is we would encumber, let's say it costs $20,000, we would encumber $20,000 out of that 47, but we would probably transfer $20,000 out of that line, which we need your approval to do. We would probably move it down into something down below, equipment, whatever.
So this budget would not increase.
The 18 budget would not increase. We would be taking it out of the 17 budget, out of the excess funds that we have not spent out of 2017 with your approval.
And then the budget would be amended to include that money, and
We wouldn't have to do anything for 18.
Right.
Hopefully, we would spend it and
Right.
build it yet this year before the end of the year.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we weren't trying to,
I'm not implying that.
Okay, yeah,
I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I can see where it would be confusing.
Right, I apologize if I came across as trying to accuse
No,
anybody.
no,
no,
I
no.
understood
That's fine.
what your
Okay.
question was.
So I think the question is, does council want chief to bring forward the written quotes
Yeah.
Right?
now? So
Yeah.
you can consider it before year end.
Anybody have a
Like-
problem with
No,
that?
I'd like to take a look at it, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I mean, it makes sense to, good use of the money.
Thing.
Hey, you go out third shift and you don't have to scrape ice and snow off your car. You know, that's got to be good for the car.
Absolutely.
And I think also to further expound on Chief's idea, I think we would like, on one end or another, we'd like to build a closed garage. One of those bays would be closed with a garage door so that equipment in the sally port and also that's stored down at the service department will free up space down there for them. We would put it there, it'd be under lock and key. Our
Speed
speed trailer, we could park in there, various pieces of equipment.
I mean, I assume that parking lot down there is monitored and there's cameras.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have digital cameras all around the
I
building,
figured there probably was.
so we can see everything that goes on. So if that's permissible to council, we'll come back on that.
I'd like to take a look at it, yeah.
Chief, how are we staff-wise?
I'm sorry.
How are we staff-wise? Do we have enough officers?
I mean, we could always use more. We are going to swear in one of our part-timers as full-time. That'll bring us up to 16 full-time, where we've been the last 3 years.
And how many
But
part-timers?
it's tough keeping the part-time officers. Over the last couple of years, it seems like we're always training part-time officers, and they end up filling in for, or we end up promoting them to full-time when somebody retires or, we have an officer that leaves, and which has happened. So my goal for 2018 is to maintain, the current staffing of full-time, maybe hire a couple more part-timers as well. And I know that there's been some discussion with the schools in possibly getting an SRO. But like I said, we're still in in the talking phase again with that, so.
Well, currently, we only have, what, like 4 part-timers?
Yes.
And you're talking
We're
about...
going to go down to 3 here Wednesday because I did have a full-time officer leave, went to another agency in Cauga County. So I'll be down to 3 part-timers. I'd like to hire another 2 or 3 more part-time over the next couple of months. But it takes time getting the part-time officers, once we hire them, it takes time getting them trained
Right.
in order to get on the road.
Well, I guess my question would be, what do we have invested in a part-timer as opposed if we just got another full-timer?
Well, for one thing, we don't pay benefits. So we don't have health benefits, which is a huge savings.
Yeah,
So basically, we have salary.
but then if we have a turnover, is that what we're having?
Well, no, the turnover is going from part-time to full-time to replace full-time as full-timers are leaving. I
Correct.
mean, is what we're experiencing at this point in
I
time.
mean, we had Detective Canterbury retire after 28 years service. I filled his spot, and then we had an officer that left and went to another agency in Cauga County, which I'm going to fill his spot. We just gave a civil service exam. If we were to hire another 1 or 2 more full-time employees, Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure what we would have to add to the budget, but it would be probably considerable.
Significant.
Can I ask a question?
You sure can.
Come
up
to
to
the podium.
the podium, please. Come up. Yeah, so it's on microphone.
Jack Gaynor, 3920 Wadsworth Road. We went through this with the fire department, if I remember right, not too long ago, about part-time versus full-time, and we saved, I don't know what the figures are, but there was quite a bit of money saved by staying with a certain amount of part-time help as opposed to full-time help for the same reason you just said there, the benefits and workers' comp and everything. So instead of having, for an example, 2 full-time people that you're paying full-time benefits to, you might have 4 part-time help, part-time police officers. One other thing, the SRO officer, I hope someone's talking about that. I don't know, but I hope they are.
I think the way we've handled our rotation through the police department, I think, has worked pretty effectively. We've always hired part-time, trained them, and then when the full-time moves out, we just are able to move up.
I mean, there's a
Well,
process.
no, they have to take a civil
Yeah, the
service
process,
exam.
'cause it's
There is a
civil-
process,
And I
but we.
kind of jumped over that space, but we're saying that they've
Correct.
passed all that, and they're,
Right.
and they've come in.
But the problem with part-time help, and it's the same thing with fire, is that you hire these part-time officers, you get them trained, they're taking tests for full-time elsewhere, and they're going to leave if they get offered a full-time job somewhere else. That's just the nature of this beast.
And that's why I was wondering if we'd be better off to get a full-time officer so we don't lose them in the process after we've trained them and
Right.
went through all the hoops to get them to work here.
And there's costs associated with hiring, whether they're full-time or part-time, there's still costs. I still have to pay for a physical, psychological, polygraph. We do the same testing whether they're part-time or full-time.
Right, but if they're full-time, they're more likely to stay with us.
Correct.
Now, that's something for another time then.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
I'm not going to labor too much more tonight. We've already been over an hour, and I want to try to keep it fairly short and sweet, but if you'll indulge me, I would like to, and I should have done this when Larry was still here, but if you'd like to turn to page 69, I'll talk about the road fund. In fact, we should look at page 37 as well, the storm sewer fund. and the road program fund, so page 37 and page 69. Let's start with page 37 first. This is stormwater maintenance, materials, management. We pay some fees to Summit County in the management area, but this is mainly a budget that Mr. Hess can also use for stormwater maintenance and materials. Just a slight increase, not an awful lot, but as you can see from our unencumbered number from 731, we did usually a goodly amount, but we're ending up with a pretty decent savings there. So I didn't raise that budget an extremely significant amount. And then on page 69 is actually the road budget. There, and I did put a footnote under the road program, something that I want council to keep in mind. You'll recall from 16-17, you remember we had, right at the last minute, we had Silver Springs come in, which actually increased the road budget. We really needed to ramp that down a little bit. I did that. We basically have $700,000 budgeted, but you'll know my footnote with the associated cost of Cleveland-Massillon Road project. Really, the total road project is $880,000 because I'm going to have to pay almost $100,000 out of the road fund for the our piece, our 10% of the Cleveland-Massillon Road project. ODOT should pick up 90%. There again, supplies, materials, Durapatch, a little bit for engineering, which is basically our $2,400 of that's our AMAT's annual fee fund that comes out of that particular engineering line. Striping and crack sealing, $20,000 has proved to be a sufficient amount to take care of our road striping program. And questions on either one of those?
Do we have a finalized list of what roads are going to be done next year?
We have a potential list of recommended priority.
Yeah, they're just recommendations at
Yeah,
this
they're
point, though.
recommended. I believe in Robert. You've probably worked with Dave on that, I'm guessing, or was that pretty much Dave going back to county on those particular?
It is my understanding that Dave was using the road evaluation to establish that list that was done in 2015.
Okay, that's the Benza report. You'll recall the Benza report in that.
I don't want to start throwing names out on streets because, again, we're just, at this point, we're trying to compile a list, but we don't have anything set for sure. So, I mean, it's...
Okay, I'm ready to stop for the night.
I got one question for
Sure.
you. Could you possibly copy council on your intentions for next week so we could be a little bit better prepared as
Sure.
what you're going to talk about?
Yep, I'm sorry. Next week, we will talk about the fire department.
Okay. Is that
So-
further things, or is that going to be basically it?
After the fire department, we're talking smaller departments in that. So I will go in as deep as you want to get in, or I'll stay as much surface as you want to. I mean, everything is right here in front of you, and you don't have to wait till next week. You can start to ask me questions. All I ask is that if you do, please email all of council so that when I answer everybody. But my plan was tonight to do service, police, roads, storm sewer. We got those done. Next week I'll hit fire. I'll probably take a look at capital projects, which basically there's only one, and probably Fund 128. That's where the sewer fund is. We'll have to extend the sewer for Phase 2 down to Weber or Trotter back to Gardner. So probably those three. The following week, I mean, we're down to just little incremental departments. There'll be a couple that I'll throw out, and we might even be able to get into some additional. I would perhaps next week we can also look at maybe the finance department, my area. One area that I am going to ask council again this year and plead with you, I really do want to hire a deputy finance director. So take a look at the finance department. It's in there. The overall budget is still down, even with the finance director, assistant finance director in there. Folks, I'm getting older. I'm not going to be here forever in that.
A
And
question, was that in the budget last year for deputy director too?
It was, but you took it out.
We took it out, okay.
In that. So I've been trying the last 2 years. I really need to get somebody trained in so that they're ready to take over in that. I'm not getting any younger. I'm getting older by the minute. And so,
We all are.
Yeah, I was gonna say, aren't we all though, but that's okay.
so we might look at that. That sounds like a lot, but fire department, we have a fairly good size area to look at the fire department. We have the Fund 105, the fire levy piece. We have EMS fire, and then we have the capital. Pretty straightforward. And Chief Schultz will be here next week to discuss that. So that would be my plan, Paul, for next week.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Did
And
you,
like I say, you don't have to wait. If there's something in between that you want to talk about through the week, email me, and I will respond.
did you say earlier that you'd actually had some questions ahead of time from council that you'd responded to already? Or was that those phone?
Mr. Casey had asked me several questions, but we hit most of those tonight, so,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we
That was by
all
phone
knew.
call also.
yeah. Yeah.
That, we'll move on to the next item, and that's the clerk of council position, Mr. Towsley.
Thank you, Madam President. We have the unfortunate task of working on replacing Carla's position. First, I would, I think I need to make a motion. I would motion that this be open to council of the whole, committee of the whole, and not just in personnel, because I think it's important for every council person to have input. Not that we can't talk about it, but to have a vote, as this is the council's employee.
Can we do that? Can we vote on that? Say,
You can vote on anything. It's your committee. So.
Is it
All right,
necessary?
And to me, it's really just a committee assignment where the legislation goes, which probably the president council could just do. But if you feel like you want to take a vote, that's okay as well. Make it more formal. But I'm fine just moving it to committee of the whole.
well, I'm good with it. Anybody
Yeah.
else?
I'm good.
That's fine.
And I'm also open to the incoming council members giving your input as much as you'd like to. Hopefully you all got the email earlier this week with job description and several documents. I don't personally see a need in changing any of these as far as the duties and such. One of the responsibilities we have to do is come up with a salary range. And we've had some suggestions on that. My thoughts in my head, and you guys can speak to it, would be starting at $42,000 and depending on experience, up to $48,900. I kind of rounded down. So can put input on that. As far as the ad that will be put in the public notice, if we move this tonight, that ad won't be until Wednesday, is that correct?
We've missed the deadline already for the Barberton Herald. That was today.
Okay.
We still can get it posted on the city website tomorrow morning. We can make arrangements for the other two papers, the West Side Leader and the Norton Post. I also have other avenues through Municipal Clerks Association that I could post it to electronically out that way as well.
Have we checked to see if they're going to be going to press earlier due to the holiday
Press has
Thursday?
already stopped at noon today. I was
Or
able
the
to-
other ones as well?
The other ones I haven't checked on their deadlines.
So it's possible we wouldn't be able
Might
to
have
do a
missed.
lot due to the
If
holiday.
I reach out first thing tomorrow, there's a good chance we probably could get in even on the short deadline.
Okay.
could try
So,
that.
so my thinking, and maybe, I don't know how we're going to establish this for sure tonight based on that information, but my thinking was December 1st is a Friday and the 4th is a Monday. I was thinking one of those two dates to end the applications coming into the city. Any input would be
I
appreciated.
think we should advertise it for at least 10 days. So if we can get it in tomorrow, the 1st would be the 10 days. If we have to wait a couple of days after that, then the 4th should be good.
But we're not going to get them in, even if we get the ad in, they're not going to show up till Thursday anyway.
Right.
So,
We can still put them on the website by then and the other sites.
which would be,
Carla, your last day that you'll be here?
I'm probably going to be December 22nd.
22nd.
Yep,
Did you say 2nd or 7th?
22nd.
22nd.
Yep, right before Christmas.
And what's the date of the final council meeting of?
That's
this year?
December 11th.
11th. So even if we made the deadline the 4th, the soonest we could really interview candidates would be the 11th.
Well, unless you call a special.
right?
Which I'm open to, I mean.
Yeah,
So
I think
the-
we'll have to do a separate date on a Monday for this. Just focus on one day of just doing Carla's position.
Right.
We might have to,
Have a special.
yeah.
Well, and I would assume that interviews are done in executive session.
Right?
Yes, yeah.
Now, from my conversation with Carla, that wasn't the case when she was hired.
We weren't allowed to
No,
have
but
executive
back
session then.
then,
Okay.
we didn't have that provision in our
Okay.
charter. Things have changed. Yep.
The salary range that you suggested, Paul, is what the current salary range is, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And
Well,
that
I mean,
is-
I think that we should do all we can to get it out there as soon as possible, and if that means that, yeah. If that means that we go ahead and take a committee of the whole vote tonight and get the ads in as many papers as we can on the website and see how it goes from there. I mean, it's not going to do us any good to continue to think about it. We need to get the ads out.
But do we need to be definitive between the 1st and the 4th?
I'll just put it for the 4th.
Okay.
Give it a few more days, give it that extra weekend. It would be my opinion anyway.
Well, how do we decide who's going to get interviewed? Anybody?
Well, this is my thinking, and please, I want everybody's input. Let's just say there's 10 applicants. I would like to see each of us pick 3, and you just score a point for those 3, and the top 3 scores get interviewed. Does that make sense?
I think we should get all of them. Everybody get to see them all. Why would you want to?
No, he's saying
Yeah.
you would pick the 3 of the, so what I think you should do is, because you can't really vote like that outside of a public meeting unless
Right.
you're in executive session. So you should have an executive session to review the applications, and then you should have an executive session to do the interviews. So you should set it up so you have time to do both. But you don't want to, you don't want to select an email and say, these are the 3 I want outside of an executive session.
So have an executive session, we all look at the resumes together
You
and.
could be ready with your 3 recommendations
Right.
at that time, but
Right.
you can't talk about until you get an
Right,
executive session.
right,
So it's possible we could even have 2 specials.
right.
Or whatever you decide.
Now, are you
yeah.
saying you want to interview, in this case, all 10, if that was,
Well, no, I was just saying, how do you decide who we would be interviewing?
That's why you would meet
That's
back.
why we would have an executive session to go over it together.
All right, I got you.
And it's I think it's kind of how we did it the last time when we hired Carla, I think, except in that instance, I think the Personnel Committee just got together and narrowed it down,
Yes,
and
they
then
did.
council
They
interviewed.
reviewed like, I don't know, 15
In this, since we now
applicants.
are able to have executive session, I think it's better if all of council can get together, look at all of them, and then narrow it down.
Yep.
Will the new council members be involved in all this too?
In the discussion, yes.
If you
In
invite them,
executive session.
if you invite them, yeah.
Which I
Right.
would be totally open to.
I would like to see that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I think from this point forward, since they're newly elected, anytime we have an executive session, that they should be invited in.
And could they have the right to pick their top 3, 2, if they do something like that?
I would say that they maybe can
I would welcome
tell
their
us what their
input.
input is, but I don't
Okay.
think they have a
No,
vote
I'm
yet.
just saying.
Yeah,
I just wanna get them
They wouldn't have a
involved.
voting right, correct.
But I mean, I would be interested in what their opinions are, obviously.
Yes. So is there any further discussion? Does the 4th sound good?
Yes.
Good with me.
Yeah.
Okay, do we need to take a vote on that, or can we just establish the
I just
4th?
establish it. I don't think you need to vote on that.
Okay, so cutoff is December 4th. Okay.
Correct.
So are we,
On the salary, are we clear on that, or?
You have that you have that recorded, what he said? Otherwise, I'll write down.
Yep, I have the salary starting at 42 and ranging to 48,900.
Is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
And I might
48.
clarify that is with the CMC certification.
Correct, yes.
Right, okay.
are we okay putting this on the website starting tomorrow?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
please.
And this is, and the piece that we have here is exactly how you want it?
Yeah.
With the salary updates that Carla has.
I can get with Carrie tomorrow on the employment packet,
Okay.
get that posted.
I think that's it. And is there more, Carla, that you can think of we need to cover right now?
Can't think of anything?
Do either of you two have anything to add?
It only involves how we post this, and I know you've got some standard ways that you have in the past of going through Barber Herald and just the local papers. We use, in a retail setting, we use Indeed, and we've been able to fill positions within hours to a day or so. I don't know if that's allowed or if that's even useful in this city situation. That was going through my mind as this was coming up. It's been in use since about 2004. It's a worldwide network, and you can find people qualified for all sorts of things that are looking.
But we're not going to be able to do anything in hours because we're going to have to go through the process.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, to
the
get
idea was just to post it
names, though,
there.
Basically, you would get names.
I
mean,
wouldn't be
throw it out
opposed to
there.
that at all.
That'd be fine.
More applicants.
Yep.
That we also know who's looking and a little bit about them in advance. Anyway.
And LinkedIn would be another resource.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see any reason why we can't use all of the electronic means and internet. You know, that's the way of the world now.
So most people just go to Indeed as a first stop for searching for jobs anymore, so.
So can we be sure that that happens then?
Okay, good.
Are we done? Anybody else? Moving on, item C, establish a tap-in fee for Cleveland Maslin Road sewers. Mr. Pelot isn't here, Mr. Pearson isn't here. I guess it's on Mr. Kernan.
Well, great.
This is a time.
Is it?
maybe
This
we
is
need
time
to open
sensitive,
this up for
correct? Yeah.
Committee.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Just did the other.
Since there's no quorum in the Utilities Committee, perhaps we can just do it as Committee of the Whole.
I can agree with that.
I agree.
Okay. And who's gonna?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about it. So if you remember last year during the
Right.
phase 1 of the road widening project for Cleveland Maslin Road, you guys installed or authorized the installation of a sanitary sewer. And so we're coming back with legislation, just like we did for Nash Heights for the fringe properties. These are for the individuals who, they're not being assessed, but if they want to tap in, there's some businesses, some residents along the way. If they want to tap in, there has to be some fee established, that council has to establish. And you have a report from the engineering firm that said, here's what the benefit unit cost would be if you were just going to divide it evenly. And it's pretty high cost, but that's the actual cost. If you're just, since the city fronted all the money for that project from the 128 fund. So what we need in order to complete the legislation is a determination from council on what that tap-in fee would be, whether you go to actual costs or some level in between. And just the impact of that would be, since you fronted the money from 128, if you don't collect the full amount, the actual cost, then you won't be able to replenish 128. So there's just, a policy decision that has to be made there. Robert, you have anything you want to add to that? I did a good job. Okay.
Just for the public's information, if we were just to go with it the way it stands now, the assessment, and as I understand, there's 27 total benefits going out at this time, would be $29,068.89. These are for any of the residentials or businesses coming where we've already put the sewers in, where the road has been widened. And this is a separate contract from the road widening itself. None of the 80% or 90% that was paid by the county on the actual road widening is involved in this. This was strictly on us, and it stated that in that original ordinance that we had with the county, that any of the utilities or so that fell 100% to the people, to the city. Now, this is per benefit, so if it was a business and they had more benefits, they would be paying more than that. Personally, there's no way I want to go out here and tell these people they're going to be paying $30,000, just rounding it up, whether they want to tie in now or later. This was upfront fee. I think it would be, I would like to see it stay at the 11.2, whether it comes out of the 128 fund and we have to do it. I think they should be entitled to the same benefits that the others have been getting here lately. I don't think that we should be charging them those kinds of amounts, but I'm open for that. That would be my starting point.
Could we look to see what other cities charge in similar situations? Is that possible or no?
It's scattershot, Paul. I mean, it really
we want to be
depends.
competitive business-wise.
Yeah, it really depends. And other cities, for businesses, they may waive tap-ins. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do when you're trying to lure a business in the town. But it's really scattershot depending on how much the project actually costs, what the circumstances are, was there any grant or loan funding involved. And so we could look, but I'm not sure you'd be able to find a good level, right? Okay. You can't really benchmark it necessarily.
Are you speaking just for the businesses, or are you thinking of the residents as
No,
well?
like say there's a business wants to come in and you use your 30,000 fee.
Right.
And they're saying, there's no way I'm not coming to Norton.
Right.
Well, one of the things, though, we got to keep in mind, that's per benefit. So some of the business properties, though, they might have 3 benefits or 4 benefits,
Right.
depending on, correct me
Right.
if I'm
No,
wrong.
that's
I mean,
true.
basically, so if it's a business, they might have several benefits attached to that. So it'll be whatever the price is times 4 for that particular, I mean, whether it's a new or existing at this point.
So when we initially set Nash Heights at 11.2, it was projected to be some other number, and I can't remember
yeah.
what it was.
24-ish.
24, something like
Ish,
that.
yeah.
So 11.2 is some percentage of that, right? 45%, something like that. Wouldn't it make more sense to work with percentages as opposed to raw numbers and say, okay, if we're going to charge Nash Heights 45% of what the benefit cost is, why not take that 29 and figure out what 45% of that is, and then that's the benefit cost?
What was that, 11? I don't think the 11.2 was actually any kind of a percentage, but if we could.
No,
look at
it wasn't, but it is a
look at
percentage
it
It is a
now.
like that.
percentage at the end of the day, though. I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't, I don't know that we took a specific
We didn't.
percentage, but if we just figure out whatever the percentage
Whatever that
is
was.
and apply it, it should be, I mean, if that's the direction
It
you
would be
wanna go.
rough, but I mean, it
Yeah.
would, because we don't know at this point what the final costs are and what the final
Right.
benefit would have been, but it's gonna be fairly close.
Regardless what we set it, does the administration have the ability, if a business were interested, to come back to council and work with that business, negotiate?
It would have to come back to council,
Yeah.
but yes.
Whether it's
Council could decide to waive,
To waive.
yeah.
Or decrease, I mean, because, basically, if we do some incentive program of some sort.
Don't look at me, I'm not
Mr.
council.
Fowler, please.
Well, no, so there are alternatives that we have when a business would be interested in coming to the city. One of the things we could do is create a development agreement with the potential business. In that development agreement, we would outline all the costs that we could assume on behalf of the business in order to incentivize their location here. So, I mean, we have options. I don't think we'd be set in if something like that would arise. And the other thing you have is other large tracts of land that they could potentially see an increase of property value that they could transfer and subsequently develop and other things. So with those development agreements, we'll have the opportunity to negotiate on behalf of the city and try to make sure that we cover costs.
I just want to make sure council doesn't make a decision that puts the city in detriment in the future, in a negotiation.
Well, I do like the idea of looking at that as a percentage of the 11, looking at what the 11.2 was a percentage of, and frankly, any of the residentials coming through there, to me, their property values are going to be increased much more readily than what a residential neighborhood would, because this is already designated as, we're looking at this as our commercial corridor. And so they would see the benefit of actually their property values being raised more so than anybody down in Nash Heights or any place else is going to back in a residential neighborhood. So I like that idea. I just went and have a baseline to start with, because there's no way I'm going out there and telling a resident, I'm going to charge you $30,000 for an assessment. Not that you have to tie in today or any time, but if your septic failed, you would. Which is why we need to get this done as soon as possible for your protection, as much as to just start looking at what we're going to be doing here going on.
When does this need to be in place?
Well, I believe the sewer is available now.
Okay.
So the
So-
sooner the better.
So, can
Let me ask,
we?
has any of the 27 parcels been contacted by administration that,
No,
no, okay.
nothing pending yet.
So can we get a firmer number of how that would compare to Nash Heights?
Yeah. It was around 60%.
Is it 60?
It was around, but I can get you the number, because
Yeah.
we had all the, it was like a million spreadsheets that were
Right,
done, but
right.
it was around 60%-ish.
Okay, okay. And, if we can do that, then we can figure out what this would need to be, and we can go ahead and set it and move it through. Which doesn't mean that we can't, like we said, change things later if we need to. But it's kind of like the Nash Heights thing, we need to get it set so we have something.
Yeah, just to cover the people so they don't come in and we don't have anything. What are we going to do? Say 30,000?
So could we potentially get that number this week, put this on committee of the whole for next week, and then add it to the agenda for a first reading and waive?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Are you making that motion?
Yeah.
I'll second.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. McGlone?
Yes.
And Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Moving on, unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business coming before council? Did we get maybe we've asked, I don't know, the fringe letters, have they been sent? Are they going to be sent out?
The fringe letters have been sent out, and we've run into our first question regarding that issue, and Mr. Markey and I have to discuss that matter.
Okay, so they were. I'd just like to remind council, and maybe we need to look at this a little differently. We still need to get a Board of Tax Review up and running, of which we've had one come forward. For this position, council needs 2, the mayor needs 1. Is this something maybe we need to be looking to run an ad for or something? Just so we can get this done and forget about it? Instead of letting it go for 2 years?
Move it along?
Well, yeah, but we sat here, we didn't do anything with it for a couple of years. I think we better do it
Is it
before
on the
somebody comes
website?
questioning
It's not on the
us.
website. We can put it on the website.
Yeah, it needs to
though.
be, I mean,
Why
at
don't
least
we-
post it on the website.
Yeah.
It's probably what we need to do.
Okay. New business, is there any new business coming before council? Topics for the next work session, Monday, December 4th?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's right. Well, I guess we'll have the budget, Cleveland Maslin sewer assessments, maybe council clerk stuff, zoning issues, possibility. That's all I have. Anybody else?
No.
Public comment? Okay, we only have one. Before I call you up, or I'll remind you, you have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record when you come to the podium, and that's Mr. Lino.
I've been kind of wondering about something. My cable bill is going up by leaps and bounds now, and I was wondering if the city of Norton still gets any kind of retainer. Remember when we let them come into this town, they would give us a, I don't know, little percentage. I don't know if the Norton is still collecting that,
We're still
or
getting
if they're not, so be it. But if they are, with the Spectrum bunch coming in, would that change? You know, so I really don't know. I haven't heard anything. We used to get that, and I don't know if we still do or not. So
I think we're still getting it, aren't we, Mr. Messner?
Franchise?
Franchise.
That was franchise
Franchise.
fees. Yeah.
Did it increase any if they're raising their prices?
no, it'll stay. But my prices go up, but they're what they pay. But I was wondering now with the Spectrum bunch moving in, if that's going to stop or continue.
No,
Because
they're
I
still
know my bills are going up by leaps and bounds, and if the Norton is getting anything back from these things, they should be getting pretty good, fees from that. So I'm just curious if we still get it or not. I don't know.
We do collect a franchise cable fee. Spectrum actually took over for Time Warner in that. I have not seen any increase in those fees.
Okay. But I mean, my fees are going up, but they'll still pay Norton what they are now. But I didn't know with Spectrum moving in.
Mr. Lionel, have you contacted your provider about your fees going up?
Oh, yeah.
Because
They say I'm under.
Well, I know
Yeah,
they're
I'm
bleeding
under
subscriptions right now.
I'm under Time Warner for $150, but we can put you under the Spectrum package, which is going to be a lot better, for only $40 more. And I said, we're going the wrong direction here, But I was less than about $90-some last year. I'm up to almost 150, and with the Spectrum coming along with these new things, it's going to continue. So the only way I could get out of it would be go to direct or something like that. But since their fees are going up and up and up, I was hoping that Norton would be getting a little more in the till. So.
Mr. Gaynor.
Mr. Gaynor?
I spoke to Mr. Messner about this the other day, and I forgot to ask him when I was talking to him. What's the franchise fee based on? I understand it's approximately $100,000 a year, but what's it based on? I mean, like he just jogged my memory. Is it based on the amount of customers in an area? Is it based on the fact that maybe the prices, like he said, have went up to the people who are paying it? How do we know what our franchise fee is supposed to be?
I think it's $5, isn't it?
Pardon?
Isn't it? I just think it's $5 per resident.
per resident?
I think
I mean, that's using the service, or $5 per resident, period?
I think on the bill, I don't know if it says it on the bill now, but it used to say $5.
Well, if that's the case, we got a hell of a deal, because we're getting about what, I think it's a neighborhood of $100,000 for the franchise fee per year in the last year and this year coming.
I'd have to look at the bill again, but I thought it said 5 at one time,
But,
Sounds about right.
yeah.
but we've got 12,000 people, so you'd only be at $60,000. So evidently, it's not based on just that. And, I mean, it's possible. I'd like to see, just personally, I'd like to see the way it's written up as to what it's based on, and does it increase per customer increase? Does it increase for their bill being increased? Or I don't know the particulars of it, but it'd be interesting to see, has it been updated in the past 10 years or whatever?
I'll try to do some research and get back to everybody.
Anyone else? Well, next Monday, November 27th, is a regular council meeting. The next work session is December 4th. Everybody have
I was just going to
have a great Turkey Day.
All right, and if I can, if you allow me to, the Shop with a Cop is December the 16th. We're still selling tickets for a Shop with a Cop program for every $100. It will allow another resident child to shop with the police officers and law enforcement personnel. So we're still selling tickets. They're $1 a piece, and I do have them in this evening if anybody's interested.
Carly, you want to do your plug?
Again, December 15th is my cutoff, so keep them coming, folks.
Anyone else?
We did.
Nope.
There being no further business come before council, this meeting is adjourned at 8:46. That is
That's what I thought it was too when you said that.
I couldn't help you. I haven't seen a cable now in many years.
How much everyone hates it. We were talking about that the
For a
other day.
reason.